Internet. We are live on air with Riley Eller and Darius Burbage. Riley is our mentor for today, and Darius is from PeaceGeeks. He's working on the Service Advisor project. And I believe we'll be talking about making money, because money is important. So, Riley, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Riley. I came from the open source and the hacking communities, internet security and testing software. Then I became a software developer for a long time, and for the last 10 years I've been building wireless networks, most recently for construction and hopefully soon for the home audio and home entertainment markets. Shipped about 7 million licenses so far, and I'm hoping to get a big B in front of that number here pretty soon. I think that's probably about all we've got for right now. Also, I helped to get Geeks Without Bounds up off the ground.
Which is a pretty awesome thing.
I think so.
Could you just introduce yourself for Riley and let him know what your role is?
Certainly. So I am the Programs and Development Coordinator for PeaceGeeks, which in regular language just means that I'm trying to bring in money for PeaceGeeks. I do the corporate fundraising, I do the grant writing, the major gift stuff. So really anything that involves kind of connecting PeaceGeeks to other organizations and individuals so that we can keep doing the awesome things that we do. I don't know if you need more detail than that.
Probably not.
So I'm mostly going to just get out of the way here and let the two of you guys talk and see where you guys go.
So how many people are currently working with, and how many people are paid by PeaceGeeks?
So at the moment there are 4 staff. There's the executive director, Renee Black, and then there's myself, and I am kind of the fundraising lead. There's also a team member in Ottawa who does, she's currently working on creating a service around cybersecurity. And so she does a bit of grant work with me as well, but she's more kind of a research and project focused. And then we have Giselle, who's also out here in Vancouver with me, and she's more focused on the marketing and the communication side of things.
Gotcha. Well, I'm just down in Seattle, so at some point we should probably one of us hop a train or a ferry and make the way. Excellent. And those are paid positions, those 4? Yes,
they are. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. How do you feel about your funding levels for the next year or so? Is it kind of are you keeping up? Are you pretty well ahead?
So I would say that in terms of funding levels, we can always be doing better. We just finished up a crowdfunding campaign where we made about $30,000, which was about $5,000 more than we planned. But at the end of the day, we don't have as much money as we like. We like to bring on more paid staff, and so we can do more projects. So I guess our big focus at the moment is kind of trying to get monthly donors, which we haven't really done much around, and to also work on the corporate sponsorship side of things, which has been tricky just in terms of not just identifying who would be a good fit, but also how we can get a good collaboration going with them, and so that we're not just simply slapping their label on a brochure or on the website, that they actually see some meaningful value working with us.
Right. Okay, so I read from an old document that you guys wrote. They were called sustainability considerations. I think of them as the actual business plan. In the business plan document, the last, I think, 4 sentences, pretty much are the parts I cared about. A lot of the rest of it's sort of what I would call, oftentimes it's done first, but more often it probably deserves to come a couple of years into the process once things are going. But it sounds like you guys are going pretty well, so a lot of the sort of get going talks that I often give, I probably will spare you. It seems like you guys have found a good niche and found a way to work together. So the 4 questions that I read here are should we be moving towards a fee-for-service model? And Lisha will tell you, I'm a very strong proponent of making people express their values in dollars. When you're out fundraising, that gathering money is gathering real commitment to the idea, to the shared vision of value. So I think that even if it was a notional number that, if we assumed 1 million people were going to use this thing, then this fee would make sense. I don't mind having the charitable projects having low income from their projects, but I do think that it's important to find a way to start introducing the idea that the things you're doing, each little atom, is itself a valuable task.
Just very briefly, are you familiar with Affinity Tech?
I've read just one little piece in some other documents I got from you guys, but I flipped over and started looking at the GitHub, but I don't really know much about it.
Okay, so they do very much what they start off like us, and then they've moved more towards, you said, like a fee-for-service model, and their focus is on providing a service, and then they do charitable activities on the side. Not on the side, but like they don't expect to make money from that. And so that's something that we've been in conversations with them, kind of saying, how do we move from our current focus, which is just on providing charitable products that obviously don't bring in a lot of income and make sustainability difficult. And then we're looking maybe to transition to that fee for service. The question is, what's that path look like for us?
So I think that, not to get into the big picture vision of it, I'm not a very big picture guy. I usually like to focus on small ball. To me, the thing would be to spin up, like for instance, a separate AWS cloud instance of some server or piece of software, and actually just get the customer to agree, the charitable recipient to agree to pay the cost basis. And then you don't have to make a discussion about license value or all these abstractions of value. Just say, look, you guys have to pay the actual cost to run the service. We'll get it going for you as a charity. At least as a start. Have you guys considered like passing the costs through?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as I know, so a lot of that unfortunately tends to come more towards the program side of things than, whereas I tend to be more the fundraising. From what I understand from the project side of things, our charitable partners don't pay a dime. The only real cost that they incur is if we design a website for them, they have to pay to renew the domain name. But on that, I believe currently we have some in-kind partnerships that give us access to servers, and so that's how we're passing the cost on. But at the moment, our charitable partners don't pay anything.
I see. Well, if they pay something, right? So if they can pay the DNS fee, maybe they can also pay like a small AWS hosting fee.
Yeah,
especially if the service doesn't use terribly much data, or said a different way, especially if it's a very scalable fee system where if it doesn't get much use, then it doesn't cost anything. Then they can start to realize the cost they're incurring and the value they're getting out of that, and start making internal decisions about how much more service do they want. Do they realize, we're getting millions of dollars of value for hundreds of dollars of web hosting? Then they come back and ask for more. And it seems like that scale, if the cost is really low and the value is really high, then there's all this room to add more service.
Right.
I would advise, even if you don't go to a fee-based model, at least a cost-sharing model, and maybe actually don't work so hard to get free hosting. Those free hosting deals can be a little, I don't want to say, I'm going to just say bluntly, they can be a little dishonest because that gift may vanish someday, and suddenly the charitable work you've done could disappear. Where if the recipient is paying just the variable cost, just the cost of the actual usage, then that's a sustainable, that's a real lively view. Even if if it's $10 a year, my Amazon hosting doesn't cost me more than about $20 a year.
Right.
So So you could, depending on how much usage is happening, it'd be worth at least investigating what that looks like and coming up with how much do we think, one view or one usage of the tool. I went and I've actually opened the tool and seen that I don't read Arabic or Hebrew or whatever other languages are represented there. So it seems like, with the code costs being low and, open source programming and the things you're doing all the right things.
Right.
But yeah, I think I would, instead of trying to go for fee for service first, I think it'd be wisest to try to evaluate whether you could just pass the costs through, because then eventually you can say, and the cost of our organization is $1 million, and we have 100 million views a year, so we charge 1 penny per view as a cost of maintaining PeaceGeeks, and then the fee comes in as a cost management, and I think that's that's very easy for people to swallow when they're not paying like an abstract, arbitrary fee.
Yeah, that sounds like a good thing. I'll pass along.
Yeah. The second question that was asked was, should we be supporting emergency and humanitarian situations? I think if you can personally get somebody in one of those, humanitarian assistance or disaster recovery or HADER, if you can get a HADER partner who's willing to pay the costs of keeping a system like this up, absolutely, that would be a phenomenal way to prove the cost basis model, and give you more explicit requirements, more mission definition.
Right. I guess there's the question I have around that is a lot of the emergency stuff. Like it's very much like there's an emergency now, and we need to respond to it now. And in terms of getting funding for that kind of thing, I'd imagine, at least in the corporate world, there'd be a bit of drag in terms of getting in front of the right people, getting approved, getting the funds, and whether the emergency is then gone by the time that the funding comes through.
Well, so, you're the fundraiser. You probably know when to go and say, like, hey, I noticed Haiti is happening again. Why don't we come in and help you, and then we'll sort out the cost basis afterwards.
Okay.
I know that one of the mutual friends of all of ours is one of the lead surgeons for the United Nations, and when he goes in, they just put, I think he said it was like $250,000 cash per visa, and they put like 20 of them on his desk, and he just hands them to people to sort problems out so that he doesn't have to think about how he's going to acquire the cash to solve problems. He can just solve them.
Right.
So, probably if you could get a handshake deal on the way into an emergency, then you could deliver sort of here are our exact costs. We just need you to pay the expenses. And that would start, I think, to resemble, if you did it a few times, start to resemble the same thing I was saying in the previous question.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no harm in getting paid.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. It was just one of those questions in terms of getting, I guess, depending on the partner, whether they would be like, if they're like a United Nations, they might be able to say, yes, we need you now, we'll pay you later. And if we're trying to approach, let's say, a corporation that for their CSR is really interested in human rights things, if they'd say, well, the opportunity's passed now. Yeah.
I don't know. That's going to be a question. You're going to have to figure out how do you convince the person. And I say convince, and suddenly my brain kicks right back to this cost basis discussion. When you can itemize exactly what you're charging someone and say, there's no fee, there's no structural donation here, just pay the cost of this thing that you believe in. You might even get a corporation to sign up for a future event where they just say, yeah, we're willing to say that we were there the next time something happens, and we're only interested in the southern, southeastern United States, or the Atlantic Seaboard, or all of the Western Hemisphere, or the Northern Hemisphere. Rules, but you might be able to get them to say, we're not going to give you anything right now. We're going to get listed as a partner. And when this next problem comes up, you're going to cover just the cloud cost of running the system. I bet you might be able to pull a lot of people into a sort of on-demand scheme like that.
Okay.
If you're convincing them, if you're really clear that like we're going to pay the CPU cost, we're going to pay the DNS registrations, a little bit of disk space, some bandwidth, that's it. That's all you're covering.
Right.
I would imagine that people would kind of be excited about the idea that their donations would be charitable, a tax break, that they get attention or notice before they had to pay anything. And then by the time comes, it's not like they're going to say no. They've already taken the credit, They have to.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and add to that when you're doing emergency work, I mean, one of the things that the Red Cross does is they do a lot of fundraising in the aftermath of an emergency that, some of that goes to this emergency, but some of it is really backstopping the next emergency. Fundraising for emergencies in general when an emergency is in people's minds may seem a bit cynical, but the way that the human brain works, we don't believe that emergencies are going to happen unless one is active at the moment. Right. So that's really the time to pounce and get people to sign up to work with you on your next emergency.
Okay.
Yeah. You may find that you have like a tiered engagement model where first they're just persons of interest, and then they agree to put their name on the website and kind of be associated with charitable peaceful information technology. And then an emergency comes and they have to cover some fraction of the cost. 1.0 probably for the cost of the thing. And then maybe after that first engagement where you say, hey, this was $74 of charitable requirement is your share of fixing this. When they see a small number, $800, $2,000, and they feel like they've really contributed to a solution to a problem in the past, maybe then that's where they really start to become something more of a monthly donor. You say like, well, why don't you guys think about moving this to like $100 a month instead of once in a while having it be a big spike in fluctuation, and then you even commit not to draw down those dollars until they get used in an appropriate manner. It would still leave you, running to some degree. It would still leave you collecting the staff salaries from, other donations and other systems, but at least the people who you were charging on demand would feel like they were getting 100% value for their dollar.
Right.
I think that's always really one of the challenges. At least in, I don't know, maybe I should be more sensitive. Maybe there's a cultural difference with our brothers to the north, but here at least in my city, people really want to know where their dollar is going. It really matters a lot to them.
Yeah, that's the same thing here. People like to be informed. And so just in the sense that you mentioned this tiered almost setup, would that be a potential way, like after building a relationship and demonstrating value, that we say, hey, what we have right now is great, but we can build onto this application to have much more functionality, more potential, and then
right. Okay. Yeah, and then maybe you say, for this once so we've moved, maybe it's more like stages of time rather than tiers. Maybe though we try to move them over time to slightly higher tiers of service after they've seen the value and gotten some. It wouldn't hurt to run around and hand out flyers saying we just want to thank Donald James Software for giving us money to help manage this problem. Please go give them a pat on the back. We appreciate it. That kind of weird guerrilla advertising might be a cute way to make them feel like they've really done something good.
And a quick question on that note then is, theoretically, so you mentioned some might just have a pure geographic interest where they're interested in, some might be more broad. Would there almost be some level of exclusivity in the sense that like IBM partners with us on Africa and Microsoft partners with us in Asia, just so that there's not like conflicting where like, hey, I'm putting money, but they're putting in money?
No, I wouldn't. I would attempt to get away from the cost basis as soon as possible and get
Right.
people onto a monthly fee
Oh,
basis.
absolutely. Okay.
And that would eliminate that conflict thing. But while you're on a cost basis, I would absolutely say, we have gold and silver level sponsors or charitable assistants. And so the gold members pay 3/4 of the fees. The silver members, they split 1/4 of the fees. And and then you just say, this is to our gold sponsors, Microsoft and IBM, without whom, more lives would have been lost this last month, something like that. And if it's a cost basis, then just divide the costs in some reasonably fair manner.
Okay.
And I would try to, if you could, ideally, you would want to have the same number. This is a mistake a lot of people make. You'd want to have a similar amount of total money coming from each group. So if you had 20 silver sponsors for every gold sponsor, then you'd want the gold sponsors paying 20 times more, so that those two buckets are roughly equal. That way, if one member comes up short or you get an extra person, you don't have a lot of variability in the sum. It's sum of a sequence of variables. If they're roughly the same magnitude, then you'll have a more predictable mean of delivery of money.
Okay.
So yeah, you try to figure out what people are comfortable with donating. When you get moving them off, sort of move them onto the cost basis so that they're not supporting anything that's not actual work. And then once they get a good feeling about that, move them onto the monthly basis, or immediately if you could. And then on the monthly basis, then say, well, we've got you on this monthly basis, and that's what we call our silver sponsorship, but there's about 50 people in that group, and if you guys were willing to step up a little bit, we'd put you in a category of your own.
Right.
And we would talk about you explicitly, and maybe we would just list them on a website, and so it would be a way to differentiate yourselves. That 1 or 2 or 3 people would want that sort of higher level sponsorship, like you said, the IBMs and Microsofts of the world.
Right.
I think that it's important to have to see it as a relationship, like you said, a progression in time, and a deepening of the mutual value. And so as you've made them look good in their community, as you've helped the people they wanted to help, as those things go up, it's reasonable to turn around and say, we've done what we said, and we'd really like you guys to be a bigger part of this, since our relationship's been going well. And I think that you can do that over time, and make it be a gentle and an upfront and very forward. I hate it when people start with saying, gee, folks, we're all really short this month and we can't manage our money, so why don't you give us some more to mismanage? That's usually when I stop donating to somebody. You said Red Cross earlier, or you or Alicia did, but Red Cross is who gets almost every dime of my charity money.
Okay.
Because they're very explicit. They don't even do what you like. They said, this is our plan for spending money. We're not going to listen to you.
Right.
Okay. You probably picked that plan pretty well. I'm willing to sign on for that. And they don't come back asking for more for today's problems. When there's today's problems, they ask for donations for tomorrow's problems.
That's fair.
So I like those things.
Do you have more questions on there? Or I was going to say, maybe this touches on something later, but so that's more like kind of like a corporate aspect. Is there a potential for like kind of an individual donor where they see the work we're doing and like, we want to support this as well, to get like, I guess that the smaller monthly donors?
Absolutely, but I think that you'd want to have some kind of a recognition plan for something like that, and that's actually challenging when it's as broad of an audience as you're thinking. If I'm going to ask everyone in the world for a donation, it's hard to tell everyone in the world who donated without breaking their privacy and so forth. So you'd want to think about, like, maybe I'm a big fan of Reddit. Maybe they're owned by Condé Nast, who have a pretty charitable bent. maybe you could get them to give people Reddit Gold.
Yep.
If those people donated a substantial amount to, a viable charity, like maybe if they gave $5 a month, then they would get Reddit Gold for for the whole period in which that happened, and then maybe you guys turn around and actually pay like 50% of the cost of Reddit Gold, which is $2 a month. So you get $1 to Condé Nast, and they would drive people toward you. They'd get a tax break for half of the revenue that they weren't receiving. That would be counted as a charitable donation on their part.
Right.
You guys would have an honest cost basis, and if it was $5 a month, you'd still come out $4 ahead. Tie in programs like that, especially where your audience is already looking. I think Reddit might be a high overlap. There's a lot of charitable behavior goes on that website.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would think about some places like that where your community is already gathering, and what internal reward structures do they recognize, and see if you can find a way to kind of provide some of that sort of already defined reward, and then don't offer anything else. Like, that's it. What you get out of this deal is you get Reddit Gold for $5 a month instead of $2 a month, and we get to go help the world. And that kind of a win-win-win triangle. Oftentimes, for the same reason that the Brits used to go from Europe, where they wanted spices, to Africa, that triangle trade plan often works out very, very profitably. So I would think about your audience and you, and what's that center of value that you might both be able to interact with, where you could set up a triangle of value.
Okay.
To the next question on this sustainability considerations list was, should we be moving more into this digital security space? I think that you alluded to your security, technology team member as being one of the 4 staff people. I'm sorry, what was her name again?
Sophia.
Sophia. I have a huge passion for privacy and security. But I'm usually on the other side of it, where I think people should live more in the open and let their flaws be known, because the real security comes from not having something to hide.
Okay.
But that's not it.
I'll agree to disagree, but yeah.
What's that?
I said I'll agree to disagree.
No, fine. I was going to say, in the communities that we would generally like to be helping, that's not an option at all. There are many places where that sort of lofty ideal just doesn't matter. So what I would say is, I would see if you can find someone whose interest in hater and security is sufficient that they would be willing to pay you guys to delve more into the security realm. Like, could you make it easier for the incident commander or their IT person to set up a solution like what you have? Could you make it more secure to use? Could you make it more secure to report into the system? And publish the results of the studies in some general format, so that every peaceful or charitable application could benefit from the research. And then I think if you can't find someone who's really willing to step up and say, yeah, actually, we think this is a problem and we need you to fix it, then it may not be as big of a problem in reality as it is on paper. I wrote a IT management model framework for hater missions, but
sorry, what is hater?
Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Recovery. It's the UN acronym for HADR.
Thank you.
It's the UN acronym for that mission type. I wrote a framework for secure information security management, and it went absolutely nowhere. People are far less interested in making a sustainable emergency response, since they think of those first 2 words as being kind of antonyms. So yeah, I would do your best and give Sophia free rein to improve the security of the product and the model, but probably unless you directly can identify who's going to pay you guys to do it,
Mm-hmm.
then it may just be a divergence from your main mission.
Okay.
I hate to say that because I 25 years I've been a hacker.
Right.
I believe very strongly in understanding security, but sometimes it's just more important to get in and help people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you know, I really liked the fourth question in this list, which was how do we make these moves without substantially compromising our core mandate and our commitment to our partners? And I kind of said this already, and I'll try to reformulate the same idea in an answer to this question.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's actually less integrity to hide the cost of using a solution. I think it's higher integrity to pass those costs through, even if when you pass them through, you also pass them through a check to pay the cost.
Right.
Just so that they understand exactly what value is being created for how many dollars of funding. That comprehension is crucial, I think, to long-term adoption of peace. I grew up in a particular church, and there was a phrase that I was very fond of called they just said count the cost. If you can't account for the solutions you're using, then you can't really use them long term anyway. And
Okay.
so if you guys can, as a group, come to some consensus that's similar to that, say like, well, we don't really agree with that guy, he was kind of crazy, money oriented, but we do believe in this piece of it. I think that there's got to be a way that you can with integrity say we can get all of the fixed costs out of the way and give you this machine that produces peace and excellence and freedom and healthcare and so forth. We can make this machine, but you actually have to run the machines yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because anytime that there's dependence, then there's always going to be conflict and strife. So making people independent, it starts, as boring as it sounds, it really starts from knowing how little can be spent to solve their problems.
Okay.
And I think that the software approach you guys are taking is absolutely one of the kinds of ways that we can reduce the difficulty and the complexity of getting solutions deployed and operating them over time.
Okay.
So I think that you can actually increase your core mandate and your commitment to your partners by saying, actually, you know what, we're gonna not only do this kind of work for you, but you're gonna become able to use these tools. You're gonna have these in your wheelhouse.
Right. Okay.
So, like I said, I normally spend a lot of time talking about where are we going to find money and what do you define value as, but you guys should be proud of the progress and the advancements you've made. I really don't have anything to say about your basic organization. I always like to try to wire the costs through, and it sounds like that's maybe something that hasn't been done, but at least something you guys can think about.
Absolutely, yeah. And thank you for it's a huge vote of confidence that
Yeah, absolutely. I have, if you ever get a chance, see the things I've said to previous programs that I've mentored. I have never had the privilege and the pleasure of working with a group that has such a coherent vision.
Awesome.
Lisha, do you have any thoughts or direction? Any things that you remember that I've railed other people for and forgot to do here?
No, actually, I've been processing some of the stuff that you're talking about bounds as well. I'm I'm taking this mentor myself as listening to it for the sake of PeaceGeeks. So
cool. I certainly don't know how to do this, but I do know how to get people to work together. So hopefully this sort of general advice works out to be of some help.
I guess, sorry, the one question that I have is currently, like a current deployment of the technology has been for the UN High Commissioner refugees. And I guess, do you have any kind of advice in terms of just general networking? Like, because like there's kind of the obvious groups, but are there other opportunities like governments or who might be able to use this application?
Yeah, I would actually go straight to Google with it. You know, they've made mapping. They've made mapping more than a little bit of a a place to hang their hat. They're awfully proud of the way that they do that, and you know, they may be willing to run the hosting for free and possibly offer, you know, substantial assistance in making these things more available and in making it, you know, layers of information more readily accessible to people. I don't know where it would go, but I would definitely think of who do I know? I'll try to find somebody that I know over at Google. I know a couple of people, but let's see.
One of the things actually Google has is called Google Ideas, which actually seemed like it would be a good fit with us, but there's absolutely kind of like there's no sign up or contact info. So they're absolutely someone we'd love to connect with, though.
Yeah. I don't. Well, so I was going to say I don't think Amazon makes much sense of a fit. And I certainly don't think Microsoft really does. But there's some possibility that Amazon would be interested in this kind of an approach for connecting marketplace people. You know, I know sometimes it sounds a little crass to bring, you know, the bazaar into the humanitarian project, but a lot of times you're talking about the same thing, you know, matching buyers and sellers or people with needs and people with surplus. So there's some possibility that the Amazon Marketplace people might be interested in helping dynamically allocate access to services. Who else? You know, there was a book about 15 years ago called The Pentagon's New Map. And generally speaking, it's not the kind of book that has any place in a conversation like this one. But the guy who wrote it, you may want to just reach straight out and write an email to him. I don't know him, or I'd make an introduction. His idea was very forward-thinking, I thought. He said that in the view of the Pentagon, the way that the world works can be seen as layers of maps. And one of the most crucial pairs of layerings, where basically the high points on one map or on one layer were exactly the low points on the other layer. They said that when they identified where telephone service was not available, they could identify where terrorists were growing up. And I'm not going to qualify that word or anything, but my point is that there were a lot of people and are a lot of people who are involved with understanding dynamic mapping and how people interact and how that has a geographic relation. So there may be some kind of, you know, you may just get a good sponsor or a spokesperson out of the deal, someone who could come and say, hey folks, geography is everything. But you may get something more out of it. It's worth kind of going crazy bonkers in terms of who you reach out to with these kinds of, you know, how would you advise me? Are you interested in coming to talk to us? Could we bother you for a 10-minute WebEx? You know, probably 90% of them just drop, but
about 10%.
Sometimes those connections really could skip you past a lot of other infrastructure, a lot of filters and layers.
Right.
Elon Musk
Yep.
at Tesla has a problem of connecting people with services.
Okay.
He's got electric cars and electric charging stations. He's got some solutions there, but I wonder if he wouldn't be, he's very charitable, man. I wonder if he wouldn't be willing or interested in talking about going, you know, larger with his visions of connecting people with services. And maybe be willing to help you guys fund through a upscaling cycle. I have no idea how to reach you on that.
By the way, are you familiar with the LinkedIn Board Connect, nonprofit Board Connect program?
Personally, I'm not. No.
So if you're already on LinkedIn, normally the person who gets the Board Connect is the executive board, but you can talk with Renee and make of it or for her to have it. But you basically sign up for a 1-hour webinar that they do, and then they give you a year premium, and their webinar basically explains how to use LinkedIn's not-for-profit tools to find volunteers and sponsors and donors and board members. So in terms of finding the right corporate connections who are interested in what you're doing, their tool would be an excellent way to find those people.
Okay. Hadn't even heard of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab the link for it and throw it into the notes.
Yeah, but thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, do we have anything else to cover?
Pardon me?
Do we have anything else to cover? Any other questions or?
I don't think so at the moment. I mean, definitely a lot to kind of take in and then go research and try and figure out how this all works and who to talk to. But it's definitely a perspective that I hadn't considered, and it's very very exciting to see that there's this potential to reach out and actually make this sustainable.
Yeah, to me that's the first and most important mission that you have. After that, after you make it sustainable, it can become anything you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sustainment, emergence, excellence.
I'm gonna write that down. And is this a one-time deal, Aiden, in terms of just talking to you, or would I be able to get in touch with you?
You can reach out to me for chat at least on Google Hangouts pretty much 5 days a week. It's actually on me 24/7, but
okay.
I'll probably respond 5 days a week.
Okay. Yeah.
And then if you want to say, hey, do you have a minute to talk to me and so, then yeah, absolutely. It might have to flex time around my work schedule, but I'm free about 30 or 40% of most days.
Okay, awesome. And maybe next time I'm down around Seattle, I can stop by.
Absolutely. Next time the Whitecaps come.
Okay, yeah.
Great. So I'm going to stop the broadcast now. Thank you, everyone, for being involved.